Spiritual gifts are not talents you achieve through effort. They are given by God's grace. Every believer receives at least one gift, not because of personal merit, but because of God's purpose. Understanding this removes pride and comparison, replacing it with gratitude and responsibility. You know, one of the greatest misunderstandings people have when it comes to spiritual gifts is this idea that they are something you earn. We live in a world that teaches us everything must be achieved, work harder, do more, prove yourself, climb higher. And if we're not careful, we carry that same mindset into our spiritual lives. We begin to think that somehow God hands out his gifts based on performance, as if the most disciplined, the most educated, or the most impressive believers receive the best portions. But that's not how it works at all. Spiritual gifts are not wages, they are gifts, and a gift, by its very nature, cannot be earned. If it were earned, it would no longer be a gift, it would be a payment. What God gives you is not a reward for how good you've been, it's an expression of how good He is. That changes everything, because it means you don't have to strive to qualify, you simply need to receive. Think about that for a moment. The God of heaven, who knows you completely, who sees your strengths and your struggles, your victories and your failures, has still chosen to place something valuable inside of you. Not because you deserve it, but because He has a purpose for your life. That means your gift is not random. It's intentional, it's personal, it's designed with you in mind, and when you truly understand that, it does two things. First, it humbles you. There's no room for pride when you realize you didn't earn what you've been given. You can't look at someone else and say, "I'm more gifted than they are," because whatever you have was placed in your hands by grace. It levels the ground at the foot of the cross. We are all recipients, not achievers. But secondly, it fills you with gratitude, because now you begin to see your gift not as something to boast about, but something to steward. You start asking a different question. Instead of saying, "How can I prove myself?" you begin to say, "Why would God entrust me with this, and what does He want me to do with it?" And that's where responsibility comes in. Because a gift, while freely given, still carries responsibility. If someone gives you something valuable, you don't toss it aside like it doesn't matter. You cherish it. You protect it. You use it the way it was intended. And the same is true with spiritual gifts. God didn't place something inside of you for it to sit unused, buried under fear, insecurity, or comparison. Some people never step into their gifting because they're too busy comparing themselves to others. They look at someone else and think, "Well, I can't do that." So they convince themselves they have nothing to offer. But listen carefully. God never asked you to be someone else. He gave you something specific, and when you compare, you not only rob yourself of joy, you rob others of what only you can give. Others hold back because they feel unworthy. They think, "If people really knew me, they wouldn't expect anything from me." But that's exactly the point. God already knows you, and He still gave you that gift. Your imperfections didn't disqualify you. His grace overruled them. So instead of questioning whether you deserve it, start embracing the truth that you've been entrusted with it. And when you begin to live from that place, not striving, not competing, but simply receiving and responding, you step into a freedom that changes everything. You stop trying to impress, and you start trying to be faithful. And that's where the real power is, not in earning, but in embracing what has already been given and using it for His purpose. Because what God gives by grace, He expects you to use with faithfulness. No two believers are exactly alike, and that's by design. Just like a body has many parts with different functions, each person has a specific role to play. Your gift may not look like someone else's, but it is just as essential. When you neglect your gift, something is missing. Now, when you begin to understand that what you have has been given by grace, it naturally leads you to another powerful truth. You were never meant to do everything, but you were meant to do something, and that something matters more than you may realize. There is a beautiful design in the way God has arranged his people. He has never intended for one person to carry the whole load, to have every ability, or to meet every need. Instead, he has chosen to work through a body, a living, moving, interconnected body where every single part has a role to play. And just like in a physical body, no part is unnecessary and no part can replace another. Think about your own body for a moment. The eye sees, the ear hears, the hand grasps, the foot walks. Each part has a distinct function. Now imagine if the hand decided it wanted to be the eye. It wouldn't just fail at seeing, it would stop doing what it was created to do, and suddenly the whole body would suffer because one part refused to embrace its role. That's exactly what happens when believers start comparing instead of contributing. Some people look at others and say, "I wish I had their gift." They admire someone who speaks or leads or sings, and they begin to feel that what they have is somehow less important. But that thinking is not only wrong, it's dangerous, because when you undervalue your role, you begin to withdraw from your responsibility. And when that happens, something is missing that no one else can fully replace. You see, your gift may not be visible, but it is vital. There are people who encourage quietly, who serve behind the scenes, who give generously without recognition, who pray faithfully when no one else sees. And the world may overlook those things, but heaven does not. In fact, many of the greatest works of God are carried forward by people who never stand in the spotlight, but remain steady in their calling. And then there are others who struggle on the opposite side. They begin to think that because their role is more visible, it must be more important. But visibility does not equal value. A heart is never seen, but it is essential for life. And if it stops functioning, it doesn't matter how strong the hands are or how sharp the eyes may be. The whole body is affected. So there is no room for pride, and there is no room for insecurity. Both of those are distractions that pull you away from what God has actually called you to do. What matters is not how your gift compares, but how faithfully you use it. And here's something you need to hold on to. God has placed you exactly where you are for a reason. The people around you, the opportunities in front of you, the situations you find yourself in, none of it is accidental. Your gift is connected to your assignment. And when you step into your role, you begin to see how God uses even the smallest acts of obedience to create something far greater than you could imagine. But if you hold back, if you shrink back, if you decide that what you have doesn't really matter, then you're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting others who were meant to be helped, strengthened, and encouraged through you. This is not about trying to be everything. It's about being faithful in the one thing God has entrusted to you. And when every person begins to embrace their role, not competing, not comparing, but contributing, something powerful happens. The body begins to function the way it was designed. There is unity, there is strength, there is growth, and there is impact that no single individual could ever achieve alone. So don't spend your life wishing you were someone else. Don't waste your energy trying to imitate a role that was never meant for you. Step into what you've been given, however big or small it may seem, and trust that God knows exactly what He's doing. Because when you take your place and do your part, you become a piece of something much bigger than yourself, and that is where true purpose is found. Your gift is not for your own recognition, it's for serving others and building up the community. Whether it's teaching, encouraging, helping, or leading, every gift is designed to meet needs beyond yourself. True fulfillment comes when your gift becomes a blessing to others, And once you begin to understand that you've been given something by grace and that you have a unique role to play, the next truth comes into clear focus. What you've been given was never meant to stop with you. Spiritual gifts are not tools for self-promotion. They are instruments for service. They were not placed in your life so you could build your name, but so you could make a difference in the lives of others. And this is where so many people miss the beauty of it all, because the world constantly pushes us toward recognition, toward applause, toward being seen. But the heart of true spiritual living moves in the opposite direction. It leans toward serving, toward lifting others, toward meeting needs that often go unnoticed. When you begin to use your gift the way it was intended, something shifts inside of you. You stop asking, "How can this benefit me?" And you start asking, "Who can this help?" And that one change in perspective transforms everything, because now your focus is no longer inward, it's outward. And let me tell you something, there is a deep joy that comes from that kind of living. It's not the kind of happiness that fades when circumstances change. It's a steady, quiet fulfillment that comes from knowing you're doing what you were created to do. When you see someone encouraged because of a word you spoke, when you see someone strengthened because of something you did, when you realize that God used you even in a small way, it leaves a mark on your heart that nothing else can replace. But serving others is not always easy. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes it requires sacrifice. Sometimes it means giving your time when you're tired, offering kindness when it's not returned, or stepping in when no one else will. And in those moments, the question becomes very real. Are you using your gift for comfort, or are you using it for purpose? Because if you only serve when it's easy, you'll never fully step into what your gift can do. There will be times when you feel unnoticed, when your efforts seem small, when you wonder if it's making any difference at all. And that's where you have to remember, this is not about recognition, it's about impact. You may not always see the results, but that doesn't mean they're not there. A seed planted in the right soil doesn't grow overnight, but given time, it produces something far greater than what was first seen. And every act of service, no matter how small it seems, carries the potential to change a life. You don't have to do something big to make a difference. You just have to be faithful with what's in your hands. A kind word, a helping hand, a listening ear, a moment of encouragement, these are the things that build people up, that restore hope, that remind others they are not alone. And when those moments are multiplied through a life committed to serving, the impact becomes immeasurable. But here's something else you need to understand. When you refuse to use your gift, it's not just about what you're holding back, it's about what others are missing. There are people who need what you have, and if you don't step forward, that need may go unmet. Not because God is unable, but because He has chosen to work through willing hearts. That's why it matters. That's why your gift matters. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Start where you are, with what you have, and let your gift become a channel through which something greater can flow. Because the more you pour out, the more you'll discover just how much has been placed within you. And in the end, it's not about how much you gained, but how much you gave, because a life that serves others is a life that truly counts. Many people sit back waiting for clarity, but spiritual gifts are often revealed through stepping out and serving. As you engage, try, and remain faithful in small things, your gifting becomes clearer. God guides those who are moving, not those who remain idle. And as you begin to step into serving others, using what God has placed in your hands, you may find yourself asking a very honest question. How do I really know what my gift is? That's where many people get stuck. They're waiting for some kind of sudden clarity, a moment where everything becomes obvious, where a voice tells them exactly what they're supposed to do. So they sit still, they hesitate, they hold back waiting for certainty before they move. But more often than not, clarity doesn't come before action. It comes through action. You discover your gift the same way you discover strength in a muscle. You use it. You step forward, you try, you serve, and as you do, something begins to take shape. What once felt uncertain starts to become clearer, not because you waited long enough, but because you moved faithfully. Too many people want a blueprint before they take the first step. They want everything mapped out, every detail explained, every outcome guaranteed. But that's not how this journey works. Faith doesn't operate on full visibility. It operates on willingness. It says, I may not see the whole path, but I'm going to take the next step anyway. And it's in that step that discovery begins. You may start in one area and realize this doesn't quite fit. That's not failure, that's direction. You may try something small, something simple, and suddenly feel a sense of purpose you didn't expect. That's not coincidence, that's confirmation. God often guides not by dropping everything into your lap, but by directing your steps as you move forward. Think about it this way. If you're standing still, it's hard to steer, but when you begin to move, even slowly, even imperfectly, direction becomes possible. And this requires a certain kind of humility, because stepping out means you might not get it perfect the first time. It means being willing to learn, willing to grow, willing to be stretched beyond what feels comfortable. But that's where growth always happens, just outside of comfort. Some people never discover their gift because they're afraid to start small. They're waiting for something big, something significant, something that feels important. But greatness in this area doesn't begin with big moments. It begins with small acts of obedience. It's in the quiet places, the unnoticed opportunities, the simple acts of service that your gift begins to reveal itself. And as you remain faithful in those small things, something begins to happen. Your confidence grows. Your understanding deepens. What once felt uncertain begins to feel natural. And over time, you begin to recognize, this is where I'm effective. This is where I can make a difference. But none of that happens if you stay on the sidelines. You cannot discover your gift by thinking about it alone. You cannot grow into it by analyzing every possibility. At some point, you have to step in, you have to engage. You have to trust that even if you don't have it all figured out, God is faithful to guide those who are willing. And here's something important to remember. You don't have to start perfectly, you just have to start faithfully. Because when your heart is willing, direction will come. When your hands are open, opportunities will appear. And when you begin to move with even a small measure of faith, God has a way of meeting you in that movement and shaping something greater than you imagined. So don't let uncertainty hold you back. Don't wait for a moment that may never come. Take what you have, step into where you are, and begin to serve. Even if it feels small, even if it feels unclear, even if it feels imperfect, move forward anyway. Because it's not in waiting that your gift is revealed, it's in walking. Spiritual gifts are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they become. If neglected, they weaken. Consistency, faithfulness, and willingness to serve even when it's inconvenient are what develop your gift into something powerful and impactful. And as you begin to step out and discover where you're called to serve, something else becomes very clear. What you've been given is not static. It's meant to grow. Spiritual gifts are not handed to you in their final form. They are placed within you with potential, and that potential is developed over time through use, through practice, and through faithfulness. In other words, your gift gets stronger the more you use it. Think about it like this: no one starts out at full strength. A muscle that is never used becomes weak, But a muscle that is exercised consistently becomes stronger, more capable, more effective. The same principle applies here. When you begin to use your gift, even in small ways, you start to develop it. You begin to understand it better. You learn what works, what doesn't, where you're effective, and how you can grow. But if you hold back, if you hesitate, if you keep your gift on the sidelines, it doesn't stay the same, it weakens. Not because it disappears, but because it's not being exercised the way it was intended. And this is where many people miss out. They may have discovered something God has placed within them, but they fail to stay consistent. They use it once, maybe twice, and then life gets busy, distractions come in, or discouragement sets in, and they slowly drift away from it. What could have grown into something powerful remains underdeveloped, not because it lacked potential, but because it lacked persistence. Growth requires consistency. It's not about occasional bursts of effort. It's about showing up again and again, even when it feels routine, even when it feels small, even when no one seems to notice. Because every time you use your gift, something is happening beneath the surface. You are being shaped. You are being refined. You are becoming more effective than you were before. And sometimes that growth happens in ways you don't immediately see. There will be moments when you feel like you're not making progress, when it seems like your efforts aren't producing much. But growth is not always visible in the moment. Just like a seed beneath the soil, there is a process taking place that requires time, patience, and continued care. If you give up too soon, you may walk away just before the breakthrough begins, and then there's another side to this. Using your gift will stretch you. It will push you beyond what feels comfortable. It will challenge you to rely not on your own strength, but on something greater. There will be times when you feel inadequate, when you question whether you're capable, when you wonder if you're really making a difference. But those moments are not signs to stop. They are opportunities to grow. Because when you step into something that feels bigger than you, you begin to experience a strength that doesn't come from you alone. And over time, as you remain faithful, you begin to see change. What once felt difficult becomes more natural. What once felt uncertain becomes more confident. What once felt small begins to carry greater impact. Not because you suddenly became perfect, but because you stayed consistent. Faithfulness is what turns potential into power. It's not talent alone that makes the difference. It's not ability alone that creates impact. It's the willingness to keep going, to keep serving, to keep using what you've been given, even when it's not easy, even when it's not convenient. So don't underestimate the power of staying faithful. Don't overlook the importance of showing up, and don't let discouragement convince you to stop using what God has placed in your life. Because the more you use your gift, the stronger it becomes, and the stronger it becomes, the greater the difference it can make. Use it, and it will grow. When you use your spiritual gift, you are participating in something far bigger than yourself. Lives are changed, faith is strengthened, and God is glorified. One day, what you did with what you were given will matter more than anything else. So don't waste your gift. Use it boldly and faithfully. And as you remain faithful, using what God has placed in your life, growing it, strengthening it, and offering it in service to others, there comes a moment when you begin to realize something profound. This is bigger than you ever imagined. What you're doing is not just filling time, not just helping here and there, not just making small differences that fade away. There is something eternal tied to your obedience. Every time you use your gift, you are stepping into a purpose that reaches beyond this moment, beyond this life, into something that lasts. We often measure things by what we can see right now. We look for immediate results, quick outcomes, visible success. But the truth is, the most important things are not always the most visible things. There are lives being shaped, hearts being encouraged, faith being strengthened in ways you may never fully witness. You may speak a word that seems simple to you, but it lands in someone's life at just the right moment and changes their direction. You may offer encouragement that you forget about the next day, but they carry it for years. You may serve in a way that feels unnoticed, but it becomes the very thing that helps someone keep going when they were ready to give up. That's the nature of eternal impact. It often works quietly, steadily, beneath the surface. And here's something that should both encourage you and challenge you. What you do with what you've been given matters more than you think. Not just now, but in the long run. There is a responsibility attached to the gifts you carry, not because you earned them, but because they were entrusted to you. Think about that word for a moment, entrusted. It means something has been placed in your hands with intention. It means there is an expectation, not of perfection, but of faithfulness. One day, the question will not be how much you had compared to someone else. It will not be how visible your role was or how recognized your efforts became. The question will be simple. What did you do with what you were given? And that brings everything into focus. It removes the distractions of comparison. It silences the noise of insecurity. It cuts through the excuses that say it doesn't really matter, because it does matter. Every opportunity to serve, every moment to give, every chance to use your gift is part of something far greater than just the present. You are investing in things that outlast time, but here's the challenge: don't waste it. Don't bury what you've been given under fear. Don't set it aside because of doubt. Don't delay because you're waiting for a better time or a clearer sign. The time you have is now, and the opportunity in front of you is real. You don't need more to begin. You need willingness. And when you begin to live with that understanding, something changes in the way you approach life. The ordinary becomes meaningful, the small becomes significant, the unnoticed becomes powerful, because you realize that faithfulness in what seems little can produce something eternal. You don't have to do something extraordinary in the eyes of the world to make a lasting difference. You simply have to be faithful in what God has placed before you. And one day, when all is said and done, it will not be the things you gained that define your life. It will be the way you gave, the way you served, the way you used what was placed in your hands. So take what you've been given and use it fully. Use it boldly, use it faithfully, because a life poured out in purpose is a life that will never be wasted.